So I was at this Indian restaurant and the food was great. And even more so, the music was fantastic. And they had this live band and they had an amazing tabla player. And I was thinking, what if I could make Logic play the tabla like a real tabla player? So let's try it. Now, I remember in my EXS24 settings under GarageBand, I have some kind of Middle Eastern percussion kit. I think it's called Indian. There it is, Indian and Middle Eastern kit. So there's got to be a tabla in here somewhere. Let's see if we can find it. Hey, I found a tabla. And it's located under keys D2, and let's say down to F1. Cool, we know where the tabla is. D2 to F1. Now, I suppose I could learn how to play these samples like a tabla player, but I was thinking, wouldn't it be cool to make something in the environment that could play percussion like a percussionist? So I came up with some really cool ideas. So let me show you. It's going to start with just a normal little instrument object. And I'm going to use this as the beginning of my data flow, right? So I'm going to name this instrument object percussion in, because that's where my data is going to start. And then we're going to turn that data into a tabla player. Cool. So what do I need next? Well, you can't go wrong with a monitor object, right? So I can see some data, right? I got to see what data is coming in here and always remove that internal port setting. It doesn't mean anything. So if this is where my data is going to flow, my keyboard's going to flow into this object, I've got to set up a track for that, right? So I'll double click, create a track, and then I'll drag my little percussion in object right onto that track. And there it is. Great. So we have a track in the arrange. So now my keyboard data will flow right into there and you can see it. You can see it right there in the monitor. Cool. Okay, well, that was the easy part. Now what do we have to do to turn our data into a tabla player? Well, the first thing I want to do is I want to be able to hit one note and have Logic just play a tabla part as I'm holding down that note. In order for that to happen, I have to use a transformer to hijack that note and then send that data to where I want it to go. And so we're going to call this transformer only C2, because that's the note I'm going to hold down. So what I want to have happen is I want to hold down C2 and have that do something, right? So I got to make the connection and I have to open up the transformer and change the mode to apply operation and filter out all non-matching events. So I set the conditions to equal a note, and that note has to equal C2. And I can click on this up arrow, or I can double click on the data entry window and just type in C2. What this means now is that only C2 will pass through this transformer. Everything else will be filtered out because I'm going to use other notes, I think, to do other things. But for right now, I only want C2 to come out of this transformer. And let's see if it works. So here's another monitor object. And I'm going to pull everything down a little bit. And I'm going to wire the output of the transformer into the monitor object. Now look down below. You'll see I'm hitting all kinds of different notes, right? But none of them are passing through until I hit C2. And then C2 passes through. Great. We've hijacked C2. Okay, so far, so good. Now what do we want to do with C2? And I think I know, because I've done this before, what I want C2 to do is trigger a bunch of different notes in a chord memorizer. Remember how we found all of those tabla hits? Well, what's going to happen now is that I'm going to make this C2 just trigger all of those different tabla samples in our EXS24. Remember, we played them, we found them. You kind of remember them, right? Cool. So it's actually, when I hit C2, it's going to play a tabla chord, all of the hits, all of the samples at the same time. So let's open up the chord memorizer and wire this thing to do exactly that. Here's C3. No, wait, I don't want C3. I want C2, right? I almost forgot. C2 is what we're looking for here. Yes. Okay. So I'll click on C2, select that note, and remember all those tabla notes were located from C2 down to F1. And I'll hit OK. So now when I hit C2, all of the notes from C2 to F1 will sound. Listen. Sounds like I got them all. But to be sure, let's take a look. And to do that, we need another monitor object. I just love using these monitor objects because I can troubleshoot as I go. So when I hit C2, I get all of the notes from C2 to F1. It's exactly what I wanted. Cool. See? C2 to F1. Great. So now I've got a tabla chord. What the heck am I going to do with a tabla chord? Well, I bet if you think about it a little bit, you'll figure it out. What other object in the environment can do cool things with a chord? Well, I'll tell you right now, that object is an arpeggiator, right? So I'm going to create an arpeggiator object. I'm going to plug this chain into its input. So now that tabla chord is going into the arpeggiator to be arpeggiated. And, let's just keep the direction up for now. I want the timing resolution to be eighth notes, and let's keep it a full eighth note length and have it snap to eighth notes on the grid. Okay, now I'm going to patch the output of this whole data flow into the EXS24 and start the transport and hold down C2. And it arpeggiated our sampler. Let's try a different pattern like up and down. You can hear it running through all of those different samples, but if you know me, you know what I really want to do is make it random. Well, it still sounds really mechanical. So let's try something else. Let's make the velocity random too. Listen. Wow, now we're getting somewhere. It almost sounds like a tabla player, but it needs a little help. And I'm going to show you some advanced techniques to bring reality into this part in the next chapter.